The White Pill is available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. I have been waiting to have our next guest on for a very long time. I am super excited. This is going to be a very wonderful episode. We have Chaya Raichik here. She's the creator of Libs of TikTok. Chaya, you have probably had more effect on our culture than pretty much any politician out there. And it's really kind of interesting because your Twitter account, which was just reposting things, has caused meltdowns from coast to coast. You've been doxxed. Taylor Lorenz came to your house and your family's house, so on and so forth. Now you've chosen to embrace it and be out publicly with your name and face. Can you talk a bit about what led to that decision?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Michael. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this as well. It has been quite an insane journey. After I was doxxed, I kept waiting for the final doxing, which was to be my face put out there, right? Because now everyone knows my name, but no one knew who I looked like. And I grew up I've always been super private, and I never had public social handles. So no one was able to find pictures of me, and every single day I kept waiting and waiting, and the suspense just was killing me. And I'm I just, you know what, this is me. I'm proud of what I'm doing. Yeah. I am going to put my face on it. I'm going to, I guess the word is come out, expose who's the face behind it. So I finally did that a couple months ago on Tucker's show.
I think the word you're looking for is pride.
Pride coming out. What's happening here? This is not what I expected.
Okay, so you're Orthodox. You keep kosher.
Yes.
Don't call you on Shabbos. You're not going to pick up the phone.
No.
Right? Separate sets of plates. Yeah, the whole deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story. Sit back, and the listeners will enjoy this too, of when I grew up, and I've had a mystery since I was a kid. And you, as someone who's an observant Jewish woman, can give me your honest opinion. Okay, there's no wrong answer here. It's just a fun story. Okay, we're born in the Soviet Union, in what's now Ukraine. Get off the boat. Russian was my first language. My parents were no dummies, so they sent me to yeshiva instead of public school, because they knew in a public school what would be done with me, having experience.
You don't get drag shows in yeshiva.
What's that?
You don't get drag shows in yeshiva.
That's right. So I wear the tzitzis, I wear my yarmulke. When I'm in school, I'm passing as a observant kid, but they knew I was an immigrant, and they knew what that meant, and so on and so forth. And I remember very vividly, it was second and third grade. It was me, the whole class is there, and the teacher goes, "Who doesn't keep kosher at home?" And I look over to Flora Stepansky, who's the other Russian kid in the class, and she just goes, and I kept my hand down, and Mark, who was the other smart kid with me, raises his hand. And my memory's wrong, but it almost sounded German, because they're like, "Come bis me." They take Mark, take him out of the class. He comes back an hour and a half later crying. They called in his parents. It was a whole situation. Okay. A girl I went to yeshiva with, Rina Azizo, I ran into her as an adult. We reconnected. We had a fun time. Her and her mother, Barbara, they both live in Brooklyn. I had this conversation with them. We did not have a good answer. There's two scenarios, okay? And it's just bothered me all my life. A little bit only bothered me. Did the administration, think that we really kept kosher at home and so on and so forth? Or are they look, they're fresh off the boat. We know what's going on. As long as they're playing ball in school, we're going to look the other way. Rena and her mom had they were we're on the fence. In your opinion, as someone who's a member of the community, what do you think was the most likely answer? Right?
I would
say,
the
other one.
Yeah, if this happened today, I would say definitely the second option. But I mean, if this happened like decades ago, like I think people were like maybe much more naive then and much more closed-minded and judgmental. So it's possible it was the first option.
Yeah, which is just kinda crazy to me because you're not keeping kosher in the Soviet Union, you're barely having food. So the idea that I'm gonna have milk and meats gonna have milk at all is just so crazy to me. But, and it's also because they weren't dumb. I mean, they knew the deal. So, at the same time, it could be either one, right?
Yeah, it really could be. And I mean, I don't know how many years ago is this?
This was the early '80s.
The 80s. Okay. So like okay, so my grandmother is from Russia and like she had siblings that actually died of starvation because
Yeah.
there was no food. So um were they that naive? I don't know, it's possible.
Okay, so we still don't have closure. I wanna go there and, like, ask, like, "Hey, were you here 40 years
I give
ago?"
you all the answers to all of your life questions. I'm sorry.
So let's also talk a bit about your work because I have a friend, Deborah So. She wrote a book called The End of Gender, and she speaks about trans issues. Gavin McGingus. I had a chapter on him in my book, and then you write, and the introductory quote to that chapter is from him, and he had said, "I want to apologize to all the transgender people threatening to kill me and eat my family. You are not mentally ill." It seems like this is such a space where it's acceptable to respond with murderous rage at the slightest bit of challenging or questioning of a narrative which is historically extremely recent. So I can't imagine, you're a sweet little like Jewish lady, like how are you like what amount of hate and animosity are you dealing with to be the target of all that?
So I got dozens of death threats a month. Or, like sometimes it's outright, like, hey, watch out tomorrow at this time. Sometimes it's just like, I'm coming to kill you. And sometimes it's like, I wish you die. I hope you die. You should kill yourself. Like, and this is with I get tons and tons of these disgusting, nasty messages. And these people I think are severely broken, obviously. If you can send that message to someone that you don't even know just because you don't like something that they post on social media, there's something deeply wrong with you. And I think that when you realize, when you have that understanding, that someone is just projecting their mental illness and their daddy issues
Yeah.
onto you, it's much easier to deal with it. And honestly, it doesn't really bother me. Like I completely ignore it. Once in a while, I'll post about it on Twitter. I have filed, I want to say 3 police reports for like really specific death threats.
Okay.
But it's not something that I worry about daily. It's not something that I feel like gets me upset or sad or anxious. Like I completely ignore it. Um, the issue I think is when you see sort of higher level people using those same tactics. So when it's a troll on the internet who has 4 followers and they have, they opened their account a couple months ago and they tell you they're going to come kill you, it's much easier to ignore. But then you see these like political commentators, these people with really large followings, like openly wishing harm onto people just because they disagree with their politics. That's where I think there's a massive problem.
Yeah, if you look at like Steve Scalise when he got shot, wasn't this big hand wringing and like, oh my God, what have we done? Let's take a step back. It seemed there was just still even more escalating, doubling down. Brett Kavanaugh is a good example of, he had to go on Martha McCallum's show on Fox and talk about how he was a virgin until he was 20. And they follow his family to the restaurants. And there was a lot of people who were kind of being like, well, too bad you shouldn't have these Supreme Court and decisions, so on and so forth. And I can even make the argument that's even more defensible because he's a public figure and he's, on salary and the taxpayers pay his salary. I can maybe make that argument. But you're a private citizen who's just reposting data that other people have posted already. So, but it also seems kind of that, I mean, let's also talk about when they showed up at your house, your family's house. Can you walk us through that story? Because that must have been a really moment for you where like, okay, things just got real. It's kind
Yeah.
of breaking between the computer and my real life.
Yeah. It just one more thought on that.
Please.
It's funny because like I'll post a publicly available ad for like a drag show, and then if like there happens to be protests at the drag show, then the left comes and says like, oh, Libs of TikTok is colluding with the Proud Boys, and Libs of TikTok organized protests. And I'm like, I'm just posting, publicly available information, and you guys are coming and like saying that I'm somehow responsible for any kind of violence that happens. So does it work the other way around too? Like if you criticize me on your
Right.
on your social media platform with 1 million followers, and then I get death threats, like is that your fault? But no, obviously it only goes one way. But yeah, so it was on Passover, actually.
Oh, wow.
Passover.
Okay.
And so Taylor Loren showed up at my house, and I'll just note that she wrote in her article that I'm an Orthodox Jew. So she knew it was Passover, and she came to my house during a Jewish holiday, which is disgusting.
And hold on, not just for for listeners here, it's not just a Jewish holiday. This is Passover. This is the big one. This isn't,
The
like,
very
right. It's not like, what's the one with the trees? I already forgot. Lag BaOmer, whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
this is Passover.
Yeah, it's not like the dress up one, where we give like gifts of candy
Yeah,
to.
Purim. Yeah.
It's like a 1 day thing.
Right.
This is like an 8-day holiday. It's very serious. It's probably, I mean, the preparation for it is like months sometimes. So this is like a really serious. This is a real holiday. It's and she showed up in the middle of the holiday. So it was actually
Wait,
it was
I
there
gotta
was
interrupt you just to give people the idea of what you have to do for Passover. You have to go through your house and like all the cupboards and everything. And if there's like a crumb of bread, you have to throw it out. Like it's really like some kind of insane top to bottom scouring of your house if you're doing it correctly. And in fact, in the Talmud, they go over it like I had to my dad who wanted to kind of be very proud of my Jewish identity, so he forced me to read Talmud. And to read Talmud, it's not only in Hebrew, it's Aramaic, and you have to know it perfectly every sentence before I go on to the next one. So I spent like a month on like one page. But it's like, okay, if you see a mouse with a piece of crust in its bread and it runs into the wall, is your house already safe for Passover? What if, okay, you have a white mouse that runs into the wall with a crust, and then a black mouse has a crust and it runs out of your house? Does that count? So I mean, talk about anal retentive. It is really a very, very intense program if you're going to do it correctly. So, and again, Taylor knows this perfectly well.
Of course she knows this. Yeah, we have completely different foods for 8 days. Everything in the kitchen gets locked up. We have new spices. We have everything, like top to bottom, deep clean. So, like you said, so she shows up in the middle of this holiday. Now, the holiday is divided in two. There's the first half, which is like the holy days, where there's also like the no electricity, no driving, no doing work, going to synagogue, all that stuff. And then there's like 3-4 days of the intermediate days, where it's like still considered like part of the holiday, but you're allowed to use electricity, and we don't have those laws. And then the second half, it's again the holy days. So she came in the middle days, actually. She didn't come on the actual holiday, or else we wouldn't have gotten that picture of her.
Right, that's fair, yeah.
But so she shows up at my house, and let me backtrack. Sorry. I opened my phone after these first days, right? We're not allowed to use our phones. I hadn't been on my phone for 2-3 days, right? So I opened my phone when the holiday ends, and I have tons of DMs on every social platform, emails on every email address I own, voicemails, text messages, WhatsApps, you name it, everything from Taylor Lorenz. She was coming at me from like every single way she can. And
Wait, can I ask a question? Do you think that was her way of showing you how many ways she had of getting to you?
yeah, I think the whole entire thing in general was like a scare tactic,
Okay,
and
yeah.
we'll get to that in a second. But so I open my phone and I have these messages, and then I see a message from one of my friends, and he said, he's like, don't freak out, but they found your name. And I'll just tell you, this was Seth Dillon. We
Oh,
were
okay.
because we were working together. He was helping me a lot with Libs of TikTok. He was involved, and he was incredible. He was amazing, and he knew how terrified I was of this happening.
Of course.
And um, so he's like, "Don't freak out. They found your name." And then I open, and there's a link to a tweet, and it had my name on it, and my heart literally stopped, and I remember exactly where I was standing, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is happening,"
Yeah.
because I knew for a while that like it was inevitable,
Yeah,
right?
of
Like
course,
this was
yes.
gonna happen. So I'm like, "Oh my God, this is happening! Like I can't believe this is happening." And then I see all the messages from Taylor Lorenz, and I'm like, "Who is this lady?" I had no idea who she was. I'm like,
Happier
"Oh
days.
my God, what?"
Happier days when you didn't know
Yeah.
who that was, yeah.
So I'm like, it was like just, it was so overwhelming. It was like just so insane. And I was like just trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, okay, I'm totally going to ignore them, right? Because that's, the best way usually to deal with these things. So I like completely ignored her. She called me. I'm not even kidding. She probably called me 20 times on my cell phone, like call after call after call. I just declined all of them. Um, and then, so I was just like, I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, are they even going to post the article? Like, if I don't even say anything, are they going to post it? I don't know. What else do they know? Because they were like going to do this whole expose. Like, what else do they know about my life? Do they find like an old coworker who hates me and they're going to write terrible things about me? Or like, do they find where I went to school and my bank accounts? Like, I had no idea what was coming. And so I was just like, waiting, and I was just like, okay, there's nothing I can do right now. Let's just see what happens. And I didn't say anything to Taylor. I didn't answer anything.
Like, can
Um,
I ask, do you have, like, a good support network? Are you close with your family and things like that? Do you have any siblings?
yeah, my family was getting a kick out of it. They were just like,
Okay, good.
this is kind of funny. This is again before we really knew what would happen. And
Okay.
then, so I thought, I was like, okay, they're going to post the article. It will have my name. Do they have a picture? Do they not? Like, I had no idea, but I'm just going to wait it out. The next day, my relatives start calling me and they're like, this lady Taylor Wren just showed up at my house.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, oh my God, like this lady is serious.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. They're like, what should we say? I'm like, don't talk to her. Like, don't engage. So we
Yeah.
went to like 3 or 4 homes of people associated with me. And and then and then I was kind of again like still like I still don't know what's happening, right? Do they know what I look like? What else do they know about me? Is it just my name? I don't know. So I'm like, we're just gonna wait it out. I didn't say anything really on Twitter, and then finally the article came out, and I read it, and it was kind of like underwhelming. Like it was just like, this is her name. That's it. And I'm like, okay, like you went to 4 homes of my relatives and like made yourself into utter fool just to share my name on Twitter. Like what was the point of that? She didn't know anything else about me. There was no pictures. There was no information about me at all. And there was no comment from me. I hadn't given her anything. No one whose doors she went to gave her any information. So it kind of was I think it was kind of dumb. Like, I don't know. I think she probably thought she got like the scoop of a lifetime.
Right.
So she was like so excited. I think it actually made her look worse at the end of the day. She got so much backlash, so much.
Yes.
And especially because like 3 weeks earlier, she had been crying on
Right.
NBC or whatever it was about being doxxed and people sharing her information online, and then she does
Yeah.
it. So it was like so perfect that it was her, because I think that really helped people rally around me because she's just so unlikable, and she like anything she does, it's just like people just want to hate on her. I mean, she did do something wrong. She did dox me, so there is a reason. But she's also just so unlikable. So I'm glad it was her out of all people.
Her book's coming out soon. Are you gonna read it?
I think it came out already. She's been like pushing it
Oh,
everywhere. All
okay. I didn't realize it's out already.
no, I'm
Okay.
not gonna read it. It's
The thing is,
just like everything she writes.
Folks, you know how important it is to stay in good shape for achieving your goals, whether it's family, career, or just personal fun. And the most research backed ingredients known to man are here for a better aging process. Our sponsor, Neurohacker, packs 7 of the most science based senolytic ingredients into one formula called Qualia Senolytic. You could take it just 2 days a month for fast, noticeable benefits for a much better aging process. The formula is non GMO. It's vegan, gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring the combined effect of all ingredients together. It's also backed by a 100-day money-back guarantee. You have almost 3 months to try it, and then no financial risk, and you can decide for yourself. If you're in your late 20s or older, add Qualia Senolytic to your diet, and it can play a crucial role in combating negative aging symptoms. Go to neurohacker.com/malice for up to 50% off Qualia Senolytic. And as a listener of You're Welcome, use code MALICE at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. That's neurohacker.com/malice to try Qualia Senolytic with code MALICE and start aging on your own terms. And I got to tell you, this is the kind of stuff that's big here in Austin, and I'm really plugged into that community, and I'm really excited to see what kind of stuff is coming down the pipe. Guys, I love fastgrowingtrees.com, period. They've got thousands of plants, thousands of shrubs, trees. They're curated for your unique climate and needs. Meyer lemons, evergreens, shade trees, everything in between. You don't got to wait in lines. You don't got to lug around the heavy plants. With fastgrowingtrees.com, you order online, and the plants come to your door in just a few days. I ordered one. They sent it. It's great. Easy. No green thumb, no problem. Their experts are just a Zoom, chat, or phone call away. Always available, eager to help. They can walk you through your entire garden to help solve problems you're having with plants and trees. Plus, Fast Growing Trees plant experts have specialized degrees and training to help troubleshoot from root to leaf. I love them. They sent me a cool tree. It grows. Everyone wins. Join almost 2 million Fast Growing Trees customers. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com/welcome. You get 15% off your order. Here's the other thing. They have a 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, so you know that everything will look great fresh out of the box. So all you people are like, oh, I don't know how to grow. I kill all the plants I have. Well, that's because you're not picking the right ones, and they can help you. You get 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/welcome. And they've got a lot of cool stuff that you're not going to find at your local big box store. Let's get back to the show. I had this funny that you said this, and this kind of speaks to your Russian heritage. I had a friend staying at my house once, my buddy John, and I went to the gym, and I come back, and I was living in a townhouse, so there's like each apartment had its own floor, so there's 4 apartments in the whole building, 3 apartments, excuse me. And so to get into the door to my apartment, you have to be buzzed in, right? So it's really hard to get in. And I come back to the gym, and John's like, oh, someone was knocking at the door looking for you, but they're looking for Jimmy, and I sent him away. And this was one of the moments, I've told this story before, where I realized the difference between like a Russian mentality and an American mentality. If I'm staying at someone's house, I'm not answering the door. Like it's like it would never enter my head to answer the door. And especially in those situations, if some lady's at the door, I'm not answering that door. So I'm glad that your relatives didn't need to be told, yo, you should be friendly, let people in. And they have much more of this suspicion that if someone's knocking at your door and you don't recognize them, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to be a headache, as opposed to, hey, we brought you a present. Here's the lottery. That's not how it works. So
Sure.
I think this kind of heritage speaks to this healthy distrust, and also understanding that people like her aren't just like, oh, I'm just trying to share news and inform. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm trying to give this person consequences because this person is doing things that I don't approve of.
Well, I will say that one of the houses that she went to, my relative answered the door, and she's not the type of person you want to mess with. And she calls me after. She's like, this psycho crazy bitch, whatever, just came to my door. I sent her flying. I yelled at her. I said, are you crazy? What the hell are you doing? Get off my property. You're crazy. Yeah. Whatever. It was, and she's like, and she just like ran away. She was so scared. But I thought that was really funny. But yeah, like if someone's coming to your door, I think that's the way to deal with it.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds very clear to me, and it's very clear in retrospect that you had no clue that this account was going to be this huge and influential. I'm sure you were just bored one day and you're like, look at these crazy people. I'm just going to repost them instead of just sharing them with my friends. Can you talk about how it started and then how it blew up? Were there like some key moments where like you caught someone's attention and then it just exploded?
Yeah, exactly like you said. And people ask me like, how did you come up with the name? And I'm like, I don't know. I just typed it into Twitter, and that's how it happened. I didn't spend $1 million on branding and on research, market research. Like literally, just like it came to me, and I was just like, I feel like I want to share these crazy videos because these people are crazy. It's also very entertaining, so why not? And they were like libs, and it was from TikTok, so it just like made sense. But then, like a couple weeks, I would say, or maybe like a month or two in, I got a shout out from Joe Rogan.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, like my phone's blowing up, and people are like, Joe Rogan just mentioned you. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
went to watch. I was like, oh my God. And I think I got like 25,000 followers within 24 hours. And
Yeah.
then about 2 weeks later, he did it again. And again, over like 3 days, I got close to like 50,000 followers. Like Joe Rogan really pushed me over the top. Like he pushed me over the 100,000 mark. I remember that. So that was huge. And then from there, I mean, it's just compounded, like slowly people start mentioning me. I'm being quoted in Fox News articles and New York Post and Daily Wire, because I'm breaking really important stories. So, everyone's following and retweeting and sharing. And then also, I think that this whole like anti wokeness, specifically for like the gender cult, it wasn't really so popular to speak out so strongly and publicly against it. And I think it's partly because people didn't realize like how really far it all went. And then, I was able to come and show firsthand evidence of like, this is really what's happening. Like it's in your kid's classroom, it's in your kid's hospital, it's in the store you go to, like this is everywhere. It's in every corporation, like this whole agenda. So I think that it really helped show people what's happening, but also helped inspire other people with large platforms to also start speaking out really strongly against it.
I had a very jarring moment in the last year because when I was in high school, I was a huge fan of Camille Paglia. And Camille Paglia constantly talked about drag and how awesome it is. And I was a big fan of it for years because it's the real way to be it was a way to be transgressive. RuPaul has performed in blackface. There's a drag queen called Sharon Needles who's worn a swastika. Like this is an opportunity to be really, really offensive over the top because at the end of the day, it's a man addressed. So there is this kind of irony and subversion to it. And I went back and there was this one thing she talked about in her book called Glenda and Camille Do Downtown, where it's Camille Paglia and a drag queen named Glenda Orgasm going and yelling at all the feminists. And this is when feminists were very anti-pornography and anti-sex. So they were having these protests against like Playboy magazine, and she's yelling at all of them. Then they go to this pornography store. And I guess I was in high school. I didn't register it when I was reading it. And I just found the video again last year. And she's talking about how we need more like Lolita, and we need more of this getting over this idea that children don't have sexual appetites and, this kind of man boy stuff. And I'm kind of looking at it, was kind of like the end of The Usual Suspects. I'm like, holy crap, this has been there like from the beginning, not secret, like staring at me in the face. And there's such a big difference between something that is performed at a nightclub where everyone's drunk or high Saturday night at midnight versus a library when you have 5-year-olds. And, there's this meme, which I'm sure you've seen. It's like, why aren't you reading to elderly people? People in the hospital, veterans. There's lots of lonely people who would like, companionship or an activity. Why are you specifically targeting kids? I had James Lindsay on the show, and he talked about the originator of Drag Queen Story Hour, and it was very explicit that this is an attempt to introduce queerness to young children, as opposed to the much more benign approach of, look, we're just getting kids not to hate gay people. It's like, well, gay people don't all wear dresses and makeup. This is not being gay. This is something specific and performative.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that paper that James also mentioned, that the drag queen who goes by Little Miss Hot Mess, he himself wrote this paper. And that's the other thing. Like, it's just their whole claim is it's just a form of art. And,
right.
it's fun. Kids like entertainment. It's harmless. But this drag queen, Little Miss Hot Mess, wrote this paper and basically says that the whole purpose of drag is to queer the family. And they're not even hiding it. It's not a secret. And then you look at their drag names and it's like, I mean, there was a drag queen who performed in a school in California. I posted about this. It was about a year ago. And I'm not kidding. His drag name was Nicole Jizz. So how can you tell me this is not sexual when you look at their drag names? Like they come up with these names and it's like, come on.
But then, I mean, that's
And Nicole Jizz is performing in an elementary school. Like, how is this normal?
but the thing is, you can see why this is something that's funny in a cabaret or
For
burlesque
adults.
kind of for adults,
Yeah,
adults who are high, who are out there to have like hedonism. That's fine, but like again, and the other thing is the whole point of this lifestyle was you don't have to deal with annoying kids. That you could, Fran Lebowitz, who's another great pundit, she had this whole bit in her documentary about her by Martin Scorsese. She's like, "Are you kidding me? People used to pretend to be gay to get out of going into the military." She's like marriage and like the military, these are the two most confining institutions, and now everyone's beating the door to get in. She's like, this doesn't make sense. This was one of the benefits of being gay, that you don't have to deal with this nonsense. So it is very interesting because for decades, this is kind of that slippery slope argument. There was the case, which is like, look, we just want to have if my partner's in the hospital dying, I should be able to visit them. If I have a will, I should be able to leave it to my partner, or get married. Just recognize our relationships. It's just the same as yours. And then very quickly it's like, if you're not teaching your kindergartner about blowjobs, you basically are Hitler.
Yeah, and that's why there's this organization, Gays Against Groomers. Like they were
Right.
born out of necessity because you have all of these gay people who are not on board with this whole agenda targeting the kids, right? They're on board with gay rights, from decades ago. It's this whole new they kind of like the activists hijack the entire movement and they're
Right.
ruining it for a lot of people.
So I think it's become kind of a badge of honor for some of these TikTokers to be on your radar screen, right? And does it not seem that some of them are really trying to be performative to get your attention?
I would say it's a very small minority. There are
Okay.
a few there are a few that like I know already, like I feel like we know each other and they will like put out videos for me like, hey, Libs a TikTok, I'm going to teach
Right.
today and whatever. There are very few like that. But I would say the majority of them, I mean, proof is a lot of times they delete the videos after I post it. They delete their
Okay.
accounts, they go private. So I think that a lot of them are not expecting their videos to go this viral. But I mean, if you put something out on a public platform, you're putting out a video, you never know who could see it. So I think I'm actually doing them a favor by getting them more views because it's obviously what they want. If you're putting out a video of yourself on a video platform that's made for people to see it and that people crave to go viral. So I think I'm actually helping them. And I have seen some TikTokers actually respond afterwards and be like, oh my God, I got so many views, like so happy. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad we can help each other.
Yeah, yeah. Um, One of the things I've seen in recent months, I think after the Kanye stuff, is a rise in like Jew hatred on social media, and it's very funny because a lot of times they will be like reposting you as opposed to just like brazen anti-Semitism on their profiles before I block them. How do you handle animosity for people who are anti-Semites? Is that something you have to deal with on a regular basis?
No, because
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of anti-Semitism on Twitter for sure. It's not often is it directed at me, but I've seen it directed at other people. Obviously, it's obviously bad, and I think it's dangerous. But I actually get more anti-Semitism like from the left. Like they'll call me like Hitler, they call me a Nazi, and they'll quote this like in articles, and I'm like, you know, I'm like Jewish. Like, what?
And not just like a little Jewish, you know, it's like you're keeping Shabbos. Yeah.
I mean, we're all the same. If you're Jewish, you're Jewish. It doesn't matter
Right.
how
Sure.
religious you are. But like, and then they'll say that, like, not just that I'm like colluding with the Proud Boys, but they'll say that I'm actually like directing the Proud Boys. And I'm like, explain to me how a Orthodox Jewish woman is directing the Proud Boys. So I think it's really funny, and I think that I'm also not very outspoken about this topic, just because I focused more on the, you know, on protecting kids and the whole woke agenda. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people actually didn't even know I was Jewish. You know, someone who never really watched any interviews with me might not know.
Sure.
So I personally don't get a ton of anti-Semitism directed at me.
Folks, if the government violates your constitutional rights, please sue them. Sue the government. It'll be a headache. It could take years, but here's why it's worth it. You're not just doing it for you. If you win, you stop the government from violating other people's rights. That's a beautiful thing about our legal system. Each one of us has that power. So let me share an example. For years, local governments around the country have been stealing from ordinary people. If someone fell behind on property taxes, the government would foreclose on the home, auction it off, and keep all the profits. You could lose a $200,000 home over an $8 tax debt. This has really happened, and it happened to thousands of people. It's called home equity theft. But a 94-year-old grandmother named Geraldine Tyler sued. This is an ordinary woman, elderly lady in Minneapolis. She's not rich, but the Pacific Legal Foundation represented her pro bono. Geraldine and PLF took the case to the Supreme Court, and they won. Because they won, the government can't steal from other people like they try to do with Geraldine. You can make a difference. Go to plf.org to learn how people all over the country are fighting for your rights in court and find out how you can get involved. The Pacific Legal Foundation is at plf.org. Guys, this is such a better organization than the crap in Washington where they put out white papers that go in the garbage and doesn't influence anything. This is actual actions that move the needle and help. I love this organization and so glad to have them as a sponsor. Let's get back to the show. What do you think should be done with people who have gender dysphoria?
They should get help. They should get mental health help.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you know, I read Deborah So's book, so that's my guide because she's like actually a scientist as opposed to my opinion. And the research, according to her, shows that having people transition in many cases is the best approach because this isn't something where you could just like take a pill and have it go away.
So there was a study done in, 1 second, I can tell you exactly where. But basically, so this was in Finland. There was this leading expert on gender dysphoria, on pediatric gender medicine, and he did a study, and he said that, sorry, 1 second, it was not Finland. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Basically, they did a study on a group of boys. The average age was 8 years old, and they followed them until they were 20.
Right.
For boys with gender dysphoria. And they found that 87% of them grew out of their gender dysphoria. So there was also that study from Sweden that Elon Musk actually quoted a couple weeks ago that showed that there was a higher suicide rate post sex change surgery.
Oh, I'm not arguing with that at all. I'm saying I think you and I both agree that gender dysphoria is a real phenomenon. That it is, and it's extremely rare. The numbers are being completely inflated due to social pressures and so on and so forth. I'm just saying with that very small percent, and I'm not advocating for surgery either. I'm just saying for that small percent, like what do you do with people like that?
Right. I'm saying that the way to deal with it is not to cut off their body parts.
Oh yeah, okay.
Or give them hormones or whatever, because there are a lot of studies and reporting that show that actually ends up having a bigger negative impact. I think we have to help them. It's a real condition. I'm not denying that gender dysphoria is not real. It's obviously real, but what they need is I think they need serious mental health help. What I don't think they need is cutting off their body parts.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that in itself is a big problem, because the mental health industry is also overtaken by gender ideology. You have these psychologists, and I've posted a lot of them on my account, who openly advertise that they will write a minor a letter. Basically, in order to get sex change surgery, you need to provide a letter from a mental health counselor that says that you're gender dysphoric and you should have the surgery. So these psychologists openly advertise on their website that they will give a letter after just one meeting to a minor. And if you look at all the lawsuits that are happening now with people who are transitioned and are suing now, or people who are detransitioning, everyone that I've seen, I'm not going to say all of them have this, but a lot of them do. They all say that they saw a mental health professional and they were approved after one meeting. After one meeting, a half hour, they're told, yes, you're right, you're trans, you should transition, here's a letter, go get surgery.
The thing that I appreciate your intensity, because there's a line that they use which I find so disingenuous and malevolent, which is they tell the parents, "Would you rather have a live daughter or a dead son?" Right? And the argument is, look, if you don't do this, your boy or your son is going to kill himself. And they don't talk about suicide rates of people post transitioning. And I made this point in another context. This applies to everyone, not people with gender dysphoria. The thing that you like least about yourself is not necessarily what's causing you the most problems in your mental health. So if people have problems with their body and how they're perceived in gender, there, and the claim is, if you just do this, snap, you're going to be happy, you're going to be adjusted, and if not, it's, it's the haters who are the problem. That's just not how it works. And if it were that simple, this wouldn't have to be such a movement, because if people transitioned, no one would notice, they'd be living their lives and it would be perfectly fine. So I think that disingenuousness is really a nasty thing that's being told to parents.
Yeah, that's what happened to Chloe Cole. She's very open about that, and it's literally emotional blackmail.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the other thing is that another common thing that we see among a lot of detransitioners is they all say, like, yeah, I was suffering from something else at the time. So they're
Yeah.
actually, like, this movement preys on minors who have other conditions who are suffering. So whether that is they have some kind of weight issue, right?
Or very autism. It's the comorbidities with autism are very high. Yes.
I was just going to say autism, and Project Veritas had a video where a doctor was like admitting that there's a really high rate of autism in gender dysphoric kids. So, so they're actually preying on kids who already have other issues, and they're telling these kids, like, yeah, if you just go cut off your body parts, go take these irreversible medications, then all your problems will go away. But it's actually not true, because they're actually not even paying any attention to the actual real problem.
Yeah, the other thing that's just a complete brazen lie, and I'm shocked to what extent this is just parrot. I'm not shocked, but I mean, if there was a bit of shame in our culture, this wouldn't be happening. Is this claim that you could just pause puberty, and then if you change your mind, you can restart it later? Everyone knows, pretty much everyone knows, if someone's malnourished, right? You have these cases where kids are in foster homes, they're not given enough food, or gymnasts, right? Their growth gets stunted because of, how they work out, so on and so forth. It's not like when they quit gymnastics, they're just going to start their nutrition, and that girl who would have been genetically 5'8" is going to be 5'8" again. No, she's 5 foot for the rest of her life. Or, this kid who's malnourished, North Korea, the average North Korean, I think, is 4 to 6 inches shorter than South Korean because of malnutrition. They have the same genetics. It's not like you give them food and those people are going to get tall. Their kids will be taller because the kids won't have malnutrition. But this isn't the kind of thing where it's just like a videotape where you're showing my age. You could hit pause and then you change your mind. You could pick it up later. And they claim this with no shame.
The craziest thing is that they'll claim that, but then we'll also uncover evidence that they actually don't even believe that. So
Okay.
they're claiming it
How
while
could they?
knowing that it's not true.
No
Like,
doctor can believe that.
no
It's
doctor
not
believes it.
possible.
And there's so much evidence. Like the Boston Children's Hospital, the director of the pediatric gender clinic, she was on camera admitting that puberty blockers cause infertility.
Of course.
And she also said that this was also, I believe, a Project Veritas video. She said that they're given out like candy. So they're giving out puberty blockers like candy to kids while knowing it causes infertility. The FDA issued a warning on their website for a puberty blocker, saying that it could cause brain swelling. So like we know the side effects of this, but while knowing all of these side effects, they'll still give it out to kids. It's just it's crazy. I mean,
And here's something else that's not discussed at all, and this is completely out of a transgender context. Hormones are how animals, and human beings are biologically animals, regulate behavior, right? Everyone knows woman's pregnant, her hormones are all over the place. She's a Looney Tune. This is extremely common. And, every woman who's had a kid will tell you about it. Men who take testosterone, bodybuilders, which is steroids, heightened aggression, low testosterone's lowered aggression. This is very known. But
yeah.
somehow this claim that if you have gender dysphoria or identify as having gender dysphoria and you're given estrogen and testosterone, you're not going to have any psychological side effects other than positive ones is literally impossible. But it's just a given that if you take testosterone or estrogen as someone who's not menopausal, or maybe someone who's a male who has low testosterone, that it's not going to have any consequences on your brain, or sorry, your mind, is just completely disingenuous.
It's and they know it. That's, I think, the
Right.
worst of the whole thing is that they know it. And like, I'm a woman, I know all about hormones,
Yeah, of course.
hormone imbalance. Like, it's anyone, it doesn't even, like, all you need is some IQ points. Like, it doesn't even take that much to know that if you give kids these irreversible drugs, then it's going to have negative effects.
Yeah, it's what it's like? It's like if someone is morbidly obese, right? Before you get to gastric bypass, let's work on your diet. Let's work on your exercise. Let's work on your eating habits. Let's develop healthy habits that even maybe we can even get you down 50 pounds and then do the bypass, but we could still move you to a healthier place. You don't go straight to, all right, let's put this person, under the knife. Another example, I had a buddy of mine. I don't know if he'd be comfortable me using his name. He was a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever it was, in California, and it is illegal in California. You know how abortion is a woman's decision, but in this case, it's the government's decision. If you have someone coming to you as a therapist in California who has gender issues, it is illegal. You might lose your license and your ability to make a living, to be like, hey, maybe you're just effeminate. There's nothing wrong with being a slightly masculine woman. Try this, try that. No, no, no. You have to push them towards identifying as transgender and getting, medicine involved.
It's trans conversion therapy.
Yes, yeah.
It's like, but with the bypass example, I don't think it's entirely accurate, because in that example, this person actually has a real issue of being
Sure, yeah, yeah.
obese. Like, a kid does not have a real issue of actually being the opposite gender. Like, that a kid can't be transgender. Like, that, it doesn't make any sense.
What do you think? I heard this story from Deborah So, and I don't know if excited is the right word, but it'll be interesting to get your reaction. If this must have crossed your desk because of the work you do. Did you know now that there's like this other type where they're trying to get a, for lack of a better term, wound in between their anus and their genitals, so they have both parts? Did you not hear about this?
No.
Oh, okay, I get to be the one to tell you
No.
about that. Yeah, so they're basically, yeah.
Nothing shocks me anymore. I'm
Well, yeah,
telling
yeah. You know what face you just made? I'll tell you what face you just made. There was this, Canadian journalist who went to North Korea. And North Korea is a very socially conservative, country. They don't, like, even kiss before marriage. It's, like, extremely culturally conservative. And the journalist was telling them about gays and lesbians, and they're like, "Whatever, we don't. We know what that thing is." They come back. He comes back, and this was filmed at the ostrich ranch outside Pyongyang. So it's the Canadian journalist, the woman guide, and the male guide, and the ostriches. And he goes, "Okay, last time I was here, we talked about gays and lesbians." They're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He goes, "What about bisexuals?" And they just go, what? Like, and it's like at a certain point, it's like, what? Like, who's coming up with this? So that look on your face when you're just like, okay, it's just like, all right, I guess we're dealing with this now. Yeah, this is a thing where they identify, I guess, as both genders simultaneously or neither. So they will get a, I don't know what their term for it, a neo vagina in between their male genitals and their anus.
Oh, I mean, is that trigender? I've heard of
Oh, is
trigender.
that what it is? Okay, yeah.
But I never heard of someone getting a surgery to have both body parts.
Yep, well, yeah, it's a wound. It's not really,
Right.
yeah, but it's a thing.
Wow. Has
And
that
I'm
surgery ever happened? Like, where did
yeah.
that happen?
Oh yeah,
In
I think she sent me a link to photos, and I'm like, I'm not clicking on this link.
Canada?
I don't need to see
God.
this.
I've heard of getting piercings down there to kind of like simulate certain feelings of what it would be like to have certain body parts.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better than like
That's
chopping
better than
things
the
up.
self-inflicted. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So,
Oh
like,
my
baby
God.
steps. Like, maybe that's the compromise. Like, just
I'm
get
just,
some piercings.
I mean, like, I'm waiting for it to be mainstream for them to start like amputating people and blinding people just because they say that they feel like they should be amputated. It's
Do
happened
you
already like a handful of times, but
Yeah, I saw that woman who, like, blinded herself by pouring bleach in
yeah.
her eye. Like, just get a blindfold, lady. Folks, Jerome Powell and the Fed raised rates for the 11th time in July. The Hill has warned that it's a mistake that could spark a recession, and economists believe this is the last rate hike in the most aggressive rate hike cycle in history. And in fact, they're forecasting rate cuts in 2024. That's why bullish sentiment in gold for hedge funds just hit an 18-month high. And in fact, bullish sentiment for silver has risen at its fastest pace in more than 5 years. JP Morgan Chase sees gold prices at record highs in 12 to 18 months. Rate hikes are typically headwinds for gold. Meanwhile, gold has gone up over 20% since 2022. Imagine where gold and silver are going to be when the Fed stops raising and starts cutting. So call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late and mention my name, Michael Malice. You'll always get best in class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Here's what you have to do. Call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, or simply go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top rated gold IRA dealer 6 years in a row. So please call 888-505-9845 or just go to malicegold.com. Let's get back to the show. So one of the things that seems to have happened, especially in Europe, this seems to have been less of an issue in Europe. There's been much more pushback in Europe, and some of these clinics have been closing down. Can you speak on to where things stand both in Europe and in the States in recent months? Because this is a
Yeah.
very dynamic issue, I feel.
Yeah, a lot of countries in Europe have been taking action. So Finland bans sex change surgeries for minors. The largest gender clinic in England, the Tavistock Clinic, shut down. That was a couple months ago. Sweden also shut down this whole operation. Which other countries? I know I'm missing a few. I believe Norway. But I think America will follow, but it's just going to take a lot longer. It's funny because I feel like we created this and then the other countries followed us.
Yes, I
We're
think
the
that's
first
true.
ones who are like, no, we're actually getting off this train, like we're not into this. But it's also, I think just because of our, our republic and our constitution, like it's sometimes these things to actually change them, it just takes a lot longer and is a lot harder. Like every time a state bans like sex change surgeries for kids, all of a sudden there's like 100 lawsuits and then it gets overturned and back and forth and back and forth. So like what actually has been changed in America, I don't know, because even like the Missouri one, like the governor signed a bill banning it, and then the judge overruled it. So it's like I think we need to wait until, I mean, we should obviously keep working, but I think it's going to take another couple of years or a while until everyone gets to their senses, until we actually win this in the States.
I think one of the issues I think Americans are often naive to what extent the corporate press brazenly lies, and it is a almost like a greatest hits that this isn't happening. Kids aren't being taught about sex stuff in kindergarten or young ages. They're just being taught to accept people who are different in some ways or who don't gender conform. And the thing with social media is, as you've seen, is like, here's the picture of the book. This
Yeah.
isn't like, you don't take my word for it. Here's the photos, and these are photos you can't even show on like the nightly news because you'd have to blur them out. And these are being mandated or allowed. I don't know. It depends on the case, I'm sure. To children, the thing is, we also have kid logic, right? I remember when I was in kindergarten or first grade in yeshiva, and I was scared to go to bed with the lights off, right? And my parents always told me, make sure you turn the lights off because it costs money, right? So sure, it's a good lesson to have. And they would have the light on in the kitchen while I went to sleep. And in my kid logic, I thought, oh my God, this electricity bill's through the roof because the lights on in the kitchen all night. Well, first of all, it's not through the roof, but second of all, they turn it off when I fall asleep, right? But
Yeah.
I heard this one story about this kid learning about this stuff, and he comes home and he goes, Mom, am I going to wake up tomorrow and be a girl? Because in your 5-year-old, 6-year-old brain, and you're told sometimes boys can become girls, that's how you parse it. You don't understand what the hell's going on. You think girls are gross and boys are cool. And if I wake up as a girl, it's the worst possible thing. I'd rather wake up and be a ninja. So that is also an element of disingenuousness that no one expects even a 14-year-old to know what the hell they're talking about. But if a 6-year-old says, I'm a princess, it's like, all right, let's go to the doctor.
Yeah, and kids are like sponges, and
Of course.
that's why they're doing this to kids, because they're not having their own kids, so they want to take our kids and they want to convert them and make them become activists. But I do think though that kids do have a sort of what's the word, like they do have like a sensor of like this, something's wrong about this.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you can try. I think kids do have that. Like if they see someone strange, they'll be like, no, like
yeah, yeah,
they do. So it's funny because there's actually a trend right now on TikTok, where parents are pranking their kids and they're saying like, hey, your new teacher wants to FaceTime you to say hi. And they put up the picture of like this crazy looking person, like, and then the kids go, like, some of them start crying and they're like, I don't want to go to school. I'm
yeah.
scared. Why is she in jail? Like, are you sure this is my teacher? And the mother's like, yeah, she's so nice. And the person has like teeth and like hair, not, I'm not talking about the lib look. I'm talking about like they look like they're like druggies, like
Yeah,
drug
yeah,
addicts. And it's just funny. It's like, and I'm like looking at that, I'm thinking like kids know. They see
yeah.
something wrong, they know. And that's why I'll just do a little book plug here. I wrote a kids book, and it basically teaches kids like to be able to spot that like predatory behavior. Like if something's wrong, if something feels wrong, if a trusted adult is telling a kid like, don't tell your parents this, keep this
Yep.
a secret from you, I think kids automatically know that something's wrong, and they should be empowered to actually go tell their parents. Like they should be empowered to have that open communication, and to be able to not fall into that trap and fall prey to that. So that's something that we're seeing in schools all over. And I don't know, is part of the answer, sort of, maybe we need to be better parents, because I think that parent child relationship is so important. And I think that if that's really healthy and really strong, then I think that a lot of these kids, could possibly be saved from this ideology that they're trying to impose on them.
It takes a lot for me to get like depressed over something in the news, and this is one of the things that gets me depressed. My buddy Matt, and he encouraged me to use his name, came out as a victim to me, as a victim of childhood sexual abuse, and I went on to talk about it on Rogan because my point was, if this happens to you when you're a kid, it's not right that you have to keep it private your entire life and to be ashamed. You didn't do anything wrong. This is something that was done to you, and it's important on the rest of us who haven't been the victims to be able to be like, if you tell me this, I'm not going to think you're a freak. I'm not going to think you're dirty. I'm not going to look down on you. I will treat you and care about you exactly the same. Because, back in the day, if someone's parents were divorced or their mom was an alcoholic or their dad was violent, they had to keep that private and they had to suffer with that their lives. And now it's like, look, it sucks, but I'm not going to treat you differently as my friend, and I'm going to have sympathy for you and I'm going to care about it. And this is how these predators work, because they encourage the people never to talk about it, to feel shame, and then they get away with it. And when I talked about it on Rogan, I had several other of my friends come out to me. So if I know a handful, that means I know more than a handful. And this is much more common than people realize. And this is something, so what is shocking to me and just very depressing is attempts by the media to make this a partisan issue or to make this a political issue. I would have thought, maybe I'm naive, apparently I'm naive, that abuse of children has nothing to do with who you vote for, your views on the estate tax or immigration. This is just objectively wrong. Protecting kids is just 101 stuff that any decent human being should care about. If you see a kid suffering, assuming they're not ugly, you make sure you make them feel better, and so on and so forth. There was just an article in the Globe and Mail last week, which I'm sure you saw, an editorial by a priest, that the headline was "The Far Right's Obsession with Pedophilia is Dangerous." And it's like, if you guys fought this with 1% of the fervor that you fight climate change, things would be in such a better place. And again, when some of these Republicans like, oh, they're being raped by Democrats, it's like Dennis Hastert was Speaker of the House. He went to jail because of stuff like this. And the fact that this wasn't made a political issue by the Democrats is very interesting to me. The fact that it's a conspiracy, that these like international like pedophile rings, it's like, where do you think this pornography is being filmed? About Jeffrey Epstein, like, so this gaslighting on an issue that I would have thought is so unobjectionable and black and white, to me is very disheartening.
I think it always bothered me, and I've been saying this like ever since I started for the past 2 years, that it's so sad that it became political,
Yeah.
and that the Democrats like made it their party platform that they are pro taking kids to adult themed sexualized shows where men are dressed up as women and shaking their butts in front of kids. And they made it their platform that they want to give kids porn in school, and that we need to teach kindergartners about masturbation. Like, it's so wild. And I think that it really just got a lot worse the last 2 months with the reaction to Sound of Freedom. And it's
Yeah.
like, they just proved everything we've been saying. Like, how is this partisan? It's
Right.
it's crazy. It's like it's relatively new, because a couple years ago, I feel like we all agreed that human trafficking is bad, child sex trafficking is bad, giving kids porn is bad. Like, these are things that we all agreed on were bad, and then all of a sudden, like, they pivoted, and now this is the hill they're going to die on.
I remember vividly Jocelyn Elders, who was President Clinton's attorney general. She had said we should teach kids, and by kids, she meant high school kids, like how to masturbate, and she got fired immediately. Her point, which is not crazy, is that it's a way to discourage them from having sex with each other. Like, maybe it's a better alternative, right? So it was very poorly worded, but it made sense for what it was. And he called her up and he said, "I accept your resignation." Like, click, and like, she was out immediately. And now it's just kind of a given
Now
that
she
this
would have got like a book deal for that.
yeah, yeah. So it's really kind of disquieting and disconcerting. And here's the other thing: it's not a homophobia thing. If you had Chippendales Story Hour, or if you had Mercedes the stripper reading the kids in her nipple tassels, no one would be like, "Yas Queen." It's just like, what is going on here? This is just not for kids. But it's I do you think things are going in a better direction in terms of this stuff being shut down? Or it seems to me almost more like it's dividing, that one side is doubling down and the other side is as well, and it's just escalating in a way.
So it's interesting, because this kind of ties back to something we were discussing before. There has been so much headway in tackling this,
Okay.
in specific states, right? Like, there are a lot of states that have banned sex change surgeries for kids, like parental rights and education bills, removing gender ideology from classrooms, banning drag shows for kids. So there's so much happening on that end, but the left, like I said, they made this their party platform. They're going to fight so hard for this, that every single one of these bills, they're coming and they're opposing, and they're filing lawsuits, and they're getting the ADL involved. So what actually, like, practically, day to day, has anything actually changed? There some, yeah, but not nearly enough. But I think we're going to get there. I really think we will. It's just a matter of time.
I also think that it's very easy for Karen, and I'm going to use that as like a shorthand for suburban moms, to assume that people are basically nice, and they've been taught like, okay, Trump and the crazy Republicans. But at a certain point, when you see kids and pornography, you're like, oh, this isn't like ambiguous. This isn't some, be nice to people who are different from you, which is a positive message, which I think most people would agree with. And once you see that the people who are saying these things are not only incorrect, but they have to be lying. Like if a doctor tells you, if you take estrogen, it's only going to have positive consequences on your mind and your body. It's just like, this isn't true even for menopause, for any female,
Yeah.
biological female. That's when something clicks. And I think it's also, I'm just going to ask you this. One of the things that's very disturbing to me, and can you talk about this, is when you have these parents who get divorced and the mom decides the kid's trans and the dad is just like, the courts are just like, too bad, dad. Like, this is women get custody and women get those decisions. And it's such a status symbol for these affluent white female liberals to have a trans kid. It's like winning the lottery for them. That is, I think, people respond to incentives. And that to me is a very, very disturbing one.
It's really scary. And it's always like the liberal white mom who wants to trans their kid. It's like the stereotypical, and it's so sad. There's been a few stories. There's one really famous one from Canada where
Yeah.
they didn't give the dad custody because he didn't want to trans his kid. There was a story like that also in Illinois recently. So I think it's going to what I think is going to happen is there's just going to be a massive divide between the red states and the blue states, because the blue states are going all in on this and the red states are going to go all in on against it. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think we're already seeing some kind of this divide. Like there was an article I read just yesterday that like some crazy percentage of Democrats have considered leaving Florida. And I'm like, okay, great. Like leave, like go to California, go to Minnesota, go to New York. And then I think the Republicans will start moving out of those states.
Yep.
And then I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. What do you think?
I honestly think that the powers that be don't give a crap about kids or trans or anything. They will grab whatever levers available to further their power. And a good example of this is, I'm sure we all remember in 2016, we need more Muslim immigration. We need more Muslim immigration. We need more Muslim immigration. Refugees welcome here. And as soon as that didn't result in votes for them, they just stopped talking about it. They pretended it never happened. And it's interesting because this was a victory for conservatives, but conservatives don't know how to take the win, so they just forgot about it as well. I think we are seeing, this is the kind of thing where when you have kids, it radicalizes people far more than tax hikes. Oh, my insurance rates are through the roof. This is like, okay, this is where people get to the level of violence, and it's very natural. If mama bear, right? If you're coming for the kids, it's like, this isn't going to be a discussion. Like, I will end you. Like, this is the mentality. It's a very primal and a very dangerous
Just a
button to push.
disclaimer, because this clip is going to go on Media Matters. Like Michael calls for violence. Michael tells parents to go be violent. We're not calling for violence.
I'm not calling for violence. I'm
We're
saying
not calling for violence.
I'm
We're
saying
saying, yeah. And
leftists
proof is that Glenn Youngkin won by a massive margin his purple state based on parental rights and education. That's what pushed him over. I mean, that's like even the Democrats will admit that. So it's like,
how when AOC talks about riots of the language of the unheard, there's an understanding in leftist thinking that when you push people too far, it's going to have very dangerous consequences. And there's no easier way to push people far than to interfere between them and their kids. It's a dangerous game that they're playing. The one I want to ask you about is, can you explain what these so-called sanctuary states and cities are and what these laws are? Because it really seems that you can just take your kid, go to these states, even if you don't have custody, and do whatever you want with them. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what it seems like. And California also is trying to pass a bill that would make not giving your kid like the gender transition treatment would label that child abuse, and then your kid can actually be taken away from you. So I think that's where it's ultimately going to head. And like we mentioned before, like we're going to see insane custody battles. We already are seeing some of them. That parent that was imprisoned for like misgendering in Canada, Like I wouldn't be surprised if that happens soon in California. And it's like as if the foster care system is like so
Right.
great and it's really helping kids. Like this is what's going to help them, right? Like and that's what these states like California want to do. They're going to take the kids away. They want to put them in foster care, and then they can groom them, into becoming these gender activists or whatever they want. And it's really scary. And it's sad because, like I said before, like up until a few years ago, I feel like we all agreed the kid, we don't mess with the kids. We must protect kids at all costs, protect childhood innocence. Parents are the best advocate for their kids in general. Obviously, there are some cases, extreme cases, where that's not the case. But for the most part, parents know their kids the best. Parents love their kids. Parents want what's best for their kids. And this whole movement of like cutting parents away from their kids and telling parents that they're dangerous, telling kids that they shouldn't talk to their parents, taking kids away from their parents, for not helping them get their breast chopped off. Like it's really scary, the direction that this is heading. And I think that in the blue states, at least, it will probably get worse. And then we're just going to see a massive divide.
This is really, really heartbreaking because it's very well known and understood that the foster care has rates through the roof of childhood abuse and childhood sexual abuse. It is very well known and understood that child predators of any kind go to where the prey are. This is in any environment. Predators go where the prey is. They don't have a big sign on their forehead that says, I'm a predator. They don't look like Jared from Subway, and they're very good at passing in civil society and so on and so forth. So to have more kids being pushed into foster care is inevitably going to result in all sorts of extremely disturbing things being done to these children that could otherwise have been avoided. And this is what leads to things like alcoholism and drug abuse, unresolved childhood trauma. None of this has to do with any political party or ideology. This is all very well understood. It should be uncontroversial. So this really it's upsetting. For lack of a better term.
And I always say the moment a Democrat comes out against this stuff, I will share it. I will retweet it.
Of course, yes.
Tell them that they're great. I will praise them. But I don't know if that's happening anytime soon.
Oh God. All right.
It really isn't political, and it's really just heartbreaking. It's so sad.
Yeah, this is not a partisan. And it also bothers me when conservatives are being like, oh, this child rapist was a Democrat. It's like they're probably not voting. They're not, like, their first priority isn't to make sure to vote blue. Their first priority is to go after their kid. And if you think that if you just weed out like the left and you're gonna save, like, this is gonna solve the problem, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Chaya, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
My favorite part of the interview. Let me think. I'm supposed to remember the entire hour. I would say maybe your story from when you were a kid in school and they made the kid cry because he didn't eat kosher.
You are welcome.
Have you ever heard that story that Napoleon used the Egyptian Sphinx for target practice and shot its nose off? Or maybe you've heard that a French astrologer named Nostradamus correctly predicted nearly 500 years of human history. Or maybe someone told you that the legendary blues guitarist Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil at a crossroads in Mississippi. These stories are what I like to call historical myths. Great little tales that may or may not have any basis in historical fact. On Our Fake History, we explore these historical myths and try to determine what's fact, what's fiction, and what is such a good story it simply must be told. If you dig stories about death-obsessed emperors, lost civilizations, desperate sieges, voodoo black magic, and famous historical figures you thought you knew, then Our Fake History might just be your new favorite podcast. If you dig it, then subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.